Okay, so I just got done watching the movie Digimon Adventure 02. Hold on one sec. Digimon Hurricane Landing slash Transcendent Evolution. The Golden Digimetals. And this movie may have just ruined my life. Not because it's a bad movie. It is, but it's not the worst movie that Digimon has ever made. Rather, because I have never been just so confused, so just staring at the computer screen in utter disbelief. Like, I'm not sure if the stuff in here is symbolic and artistic and just genius and I just am too stupid to get it, or I am just too smart and too unwilling to accept the just acid trip-like madness that is shown in this film. I almost want to start a cult around it and study it, write a thesis paper on it. And I'm going to refer this movie out to people. I am going to try to get as many people as I can to watch this. And not the dub. No, screw the dub. The dub is like is completely cut down from the original. Which the Japanese original version is 60 minutes long. The dub is like a half hour. And the dub actually is more coherent at times. Despite that, I spent much less time questioning my own sanity while watching the dub when compared to while I was watching the Japanese. And right now, I can't tell if I am livid with anger or just stunned in amazement. I feel a little lightheaded. So, let's just start this video. So our film opens up on Willis, who was like kind of a thing in the first two movies, in the dub versions, but in the Japanese versions, this is the first time we're meeting him. He's a blonde-haired kid from Colorado. He's got two Digimon instead of one, and they're frolicking through these flowers, and then an evil gust of wind steals one, kills one. Anyway, it's gone now. So we learned that was actually in the past, so we cut to present day. Present day, I should say, for 02. And in the American version, we get Kari's narration telling us what's going on, while in the Japanese version, we get a montage. Both versions of these openings are horrible. Anyway, here's the important thing. Davis, Yoli, and Cody are at the beach for some reason. Kari and TK are in America, New York. And all the old heroes are just doing their normal shtick. Oddly enough, though, Ken is not in this movie or ever mentioned, which really makes me confused about when this story takes place. Because Ken's, like I said, never mentioned or seen in this movie, which makes me think that, oh, this must take place during the Digimon Emperor arc, even though this looks like summer and that arc took place during the school year. And it can't be spring, because that would completely F up the continuity of the Christmas episode they had. But just forgetting that part for a sec. Then we see later on, there's a fight scene that Davis and Vmon have, where he doesn't digivolve Vmon to X-Vmon. Which I found strange, because X-Vmon is supposed to be stronger than Flamedramon, I think. Which made me think, okay, so maybe he doesn't have X-Vmon yet, which would mean that this story would take place like before the end of the Digimon Emperor arc. But then, spoilers, we see later on that Kari has Angelwamon, which was an evolution that was cut off by Geni before 02 happened, but then they got that evolution back like towards the end of 02. So that would mean that this would take place after the Digimon Emperor arc. In fact, this would probably take place after the events of 02. In fact, Davis gets Magnamon again, and it's like he knows Magnamon already exists, but he wouldn't have known Magnamon already exists unless the Chimeramon event already happened, which means the Digimon Emperor arc would have already gone by, which means Ken should be in this story, or at least mentioned, but god damn it, I hate this movie so far. So now we meet our first big, oh my god, I can't believe this is a difference. I cannot believe they cut this from the dub. Now, like I said, Kari and TK are in New York. In the American version, they're just there by themselves. But in the Japanese version, they're there with Mimi, who's taking photos for them. But you see, that's not the big difference. No, the big difference in the story is that Mimi gets abducted by the evil Dark Wind, which then also abducts all the older Digidestin minus Kari and TK for some reason. And then all of our old heroes get stuck in this dark dimension, and then it's up to the new heroes to go save them. This whole thing was cut from the dub for reasons I am not entirely sure about. It could be anything from the censors thought this would be too scary, you know, an evil gust of wind kidnapping kids and trapping them in this evil dark dimension, or they had a certain amount of time they had to cut the movie down to, and they just deemed this part just completely expendable and not important to the story. And I'll let you in on a little secret. It's like super not important at all. But we'll talk about that later. Anyway, Kari says there's a Digimon nearby. Her and TK follow this path of destruction being caused by that evil wind, and they follow it to find Willis. Willis is basically our main character for this movie. He's been talked about, at least in the English dubs, in both Digimon Adventure and our War games. And finally, we get to see a movie starring him. He's got a little Terriermon Digimon partner who has the same voice as the Terriermon from Tamers, which is pretty cool. And he's facing off against this giant brown Digimon who he knows, he keeps calling out its name. Chocomon, I think. Although I can't take it seriously with that stupid looking hat. Anyway, Terriermon and Chocomon fight. This fight's actually chopped up quite a bit in the English version, but that's not really important right now. But anyway, it's an okay fight. The music they chose in the Japanese version is weird, and get used to me saying that. In the English version, it's just generic, you know, forgettable rock music.
Doesn't really matter where you go. Coco Crusher!
Anyway, Willis steps in and says, "Don't do this, Cocomon." And then Cocomon says, "Go back." Before completely disappearing, and Willis takes that as, oh, I have to go back to the flower fields, and TK and Kari say, well, we gotta follow him. So then Kari sends a message to Davis, telling Davis to go meet them at the flower fields, and Davis is just like, yeah, we'll go do that. They see the motivation in the Japanese version is to go save Kari's brother and the other digital heroes who are trapped in this weird dark void. And in the English version, it's just, oh, Digimon, gotta go investigate that stuff. And this is where we start to see another big difference between the English and Japanese version. Because the Japanese version spends a lot of time with Willis, just him alone with Terriermon, talking. And it's always very slow. It oftentimes doesn't have music, or if it does have music, it's this very calm, like Midwestern guitar riff. It adds to its very like surreal and artsy feel, you know, but that guitar riff's gonna get kind of annoying later on. But these scenes add to the feel that this is really Willis's story. You see, Willis is the first of a couple characters in these Digimon movies. They're basically one-shot characters, you know, they show up in one movie and then are never mentioned again. And they're very, you know, nice people, but they have some type of tragic past that needs to be explored during this movie. And they're usually just complete Gary or Mary stews. And I really don't like these type of characters because they're the characters that drive the movie. They have the character-driven scenes, they have the character development, they have the character resolution, and the main heroes are just kind of there to act around them and facilitate that growth. It just feels like the writer's saying, oh, why would we want to like develop characters like Cody or Davis or Yo Lee in a movie format when we can just invent a whole new character that nobody knows or has ever heard of and chart his or her progress. I mean, I would have liked to see a movie that does kind of play around more with characters like Yo Lee, Davis, Kari, or TK, characters who I think in their own series got the short end of the stick when it came to character development. Like, this movie could have made up for lost ground, but instead, we get Willis here. He's just of so little consequence to the whole franchise, and I don't even find his character that interesting. But I'll talk about all of this later. I gotta get back to talking about the plot. So Kari and TK are riding Amtrak to go to the place where Patamon overheard Willis said he was going. Then they get attacked by Kokomon. And then the train just suddenly comes to a halt. In the Japanese version, this is because Kokomon kidnapped all the people on the train. In the American version, it just stopped just because. And since we never hear from those people that got kidnapped again, it's just safe to assume they died.